Yeah.
Good morning, good morning, good morning.
Myself Arya,
Yeah, very
fourth year
much,
BLLB
very much.
student at Government of Trivandrum. Uh, and I am also a member at LGRF Trivandrum chapter. With utmost pleasure, I welcome you all to today's program. Before we commence with today's program, I request all of you please make sure that your mics are muted and none of you gets engaged in any kind of presentation while the class is on for the smooth conduct of the program. As we all know, today we are here to attend the inauguration of Teachers Development Program, which is a 7 month comprehensive training program for UGC, NET, JRF and other law exams. So now I would like to invite Advocate Neelima V. Nair, General Convener TDP, to welcome us all to today's program. I welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you, Arya. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, you are.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. I extend a warm welcome to one and all to this inauguration ceremony of the Teachers Development Program conducted by Law and Justice Research Foundation in association with Law Exams. It is one of the prestigious programs organized by Law and Research Foundation intended to give a 7 months comprehensive training for competitive exams like UGC, NET, JRF, and Assistant Professor in Law. It is my privilege to deliver the welcome speech on this occasion. And let me move on to my duty. At first, I cordially welcome Dr. Saroja A.S., former principal of Government Law Colleges at Thiruvananthapuram, Ernakulam, and Thrissur. A hearty welcome to you, dear madam. Next, I would like to welcome Dr. N.K. Jayakumar. I find it a great honor to welcome Dr. N.K. Jayakumar, former Vice Chancellor, National University of Advanced Legal Studies. Thank you, sir, for giving us your time to inaugurate this program. I, on behalf of the Law and Justice Research Foundation and Law Exams, extend a heartfelt welcome to your program, sir. Next, I would like to welcome our mentor and guide, Sri Safi Mohan, Assistant Professor, Government Law College, Thiruvananthapuram, to the program. Welcome, sir. And I find it an immense pleasure in welcoming the respected office bearers of LJRF and law exams. I welcome Sri Tejas Purushottaman, President, LJRF, State Chapter, Sri Ajay R. Kamath, Secretary LJRF State Chapter, Advocate Vimal Kumar, President, Ernakulam Chapter, and Advocate Jinoyam Kurian, President Law Exams, and also the Director of LJRF Academy to this program. And I also welcome Ms. Jomol, Member State Chapter, who will be delivering the vote of thanks today. Welcome, dear. And finally, my dear UGC NET aspirants, GetNet aspirants, and also the participants of this program, I wholeheartedly welcome to you all this program, and I wish you all a great day ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. That was indeed a pleasing welcome. Next, I would like to invite Dr. Saroja A.S., former principal, Government Law College Trivandrum, Ernakulam and Thrissur, who is also a well-wisher of LJRF, to give away the presidential address. I wholeheartedly welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you, Arya. Uh, Let me first wish you all a very good morning, and I thank all the coordinators and organizers of LJRF for inviting me to make this presidential address for the esteemed and innovative method of giving UGC NET law exams to the aspirants. A very good initiative. I take this opportunity to congratulate the whole team of LJRF for taking this initiative. First of all, I I take this opportunity to what do you call address Dr. N.K. Jayakumar sir. I I really feel privileged to do this address in his presence. Thank you, sir, and welcome to this session. And I also offer what do you call the warm welcome to all the participants, Advocate Arya, Advocate Neelima, the coordinator of this function, Gino Kurian, and the Ernakulam chapter advocate Bimal, and my friend and colleague Safi Mohan, Trivandrum Law College, and all the other members of the LJRF, and also the participants who are going to benefit out of this law exams initiative taken by the LJRF. I wish this function all success. Now, my duty is to give a presidential address for this program, and I take this opportunity to give an outline as to the various methods which a teacher can take initiative to instill a kind of motivation and inspiration in the particular subject he is studying during his law course. I start my address with a quote giving out the objective and motive of legal education. See, it is the challenge for legal education, linking the interest of legal educators with the need of legal practitioners and with the public the profession is pledged to serve. This concise phrase give you the very object of legal education. So, to put it short, the object of legal education is to prepare legal professionals who will play a decisive leadership role in meeting these challenges, not only as advocates practicing in the courts, but also as legislators, judges, policymakers, public officials, civil society activists, as well as legal counsel in private sectors. So, actually, the opening of a legal professional or a person having a law degree is sky is the limit. If he is really enthusiastic and really motivated, he can achieve anything in life. And law is such a vast and a wide subject. So, I'm not going into the benefits or the privileges of law or a law course, but I want to give an insight as to the methods which a teacher can utilize. Of course, all the methods which are usually done during a law course must always it is always discussed during the LLM course of a student. In the legal education and research methodology paper, we look into the object of legal education and also the methods of teaching. So I'm not going into a detailed study of the different methods, but I would like to give you an outline as to the innovative methods which is very essential in the modern era, and especially in the pandemic period when we resorted to various methods which we were not familiar with earlier to cater to the needs of the students. So, law, as you know, it has always been taught with the help of theories, principles, their practices, and applications. The connection is easily seen between the legal theories and their real life application. And law, as it is known, it consists of multifarious areas such as the corporate law. I am giving only a few examples: the corporate law, the intellectual property law, the criminal law, environmental law, family law, etc. And as you know, all these subjects are linked to one another. And a task relevant for teaching these subjects is to bridge the gap existing between them. So the conventional methods of teaching of legal studies would encompass between theory, research, and their application. But that doesn't fulfill subject requirements. So, in this context, it is very important to build some contemporary techniques suitable to the subject, which would enhance the teaching as well as the learning process. The goal of a law teacher is to use the teaching methods that most effectively and efficiently achieve the desired educational objectives. He should employ context based instruction and employ best practices and techniques. So, we cannot give a general idea as what is best for each subject. Each teacher has to identify his own method of best practices and techniques. Now, as you all know, teaching law has become very complex, especially after the introduction of the 5 year integrated LLB courses, and also after the semesterization of the law courses and internal examination system which is being inbuilt into the system. It has become very complex as to how to teach law and what method to be adopted. And that is especially with the limited time a teacher can have in a semester. So teaching law in that sense, it has become very complex. So it requires a multi-dimensional approach and an in-depth knowledge. And it is not very easy to develop a pedagogy method uniquely well suited to teach the subject. So every teacher comes across the common questions that how to teach the topic and what pedagogy suits to teach a specific topic. So some feel that it's the technique. It is a common notion which is prevalent among the teaching community. Some feel that it is the technique that makes the teacher. But actually, the most effective teaching technique is a good interpersonal relationship with the students. So, another important factor is the subject knowledge. See, the teacher should be able to distinguish between methods to be applied in doing research in law and also methods of teaching law. And a teaching style can be developed only after a deeper understanding of the learning style. So the legal education must encourage various teaching techniques and methods which motivates critical thinking, diverse opinion, and logical argumentative skills. So, in order to produce competent and committed practicing lawyers, the law school must undergo curriculum enrichment, innovative delivery of instruction, and assessment of student learning as a regular practice. The commitment of law teachers should be towards the overall development of the students. See, not only learning the subject, the teacher should be responsible for the overall personality development of the student community. And these goals can be achieved by improving academic preparation, professional exposures, and technological familiarity, which is very essential in this modern world. And a common method of teaching cannot serve all the goals together. So, diversify methods. And the recent focus of law schools is on establishment of centers of excellence through clinical legal exercises and experimental learning opportunities. But merely through these activities, the core objectives of legal education cannot be achieved. A proper teacher training is definitely required to make them multi-dimension and multi-skilled trainer. And as you know, teaching and learning, they are two important aspects of education. See, these terms are often used interchangeably, and it gives a what you call a confused meaning. as it is believed that a teacher is responsible for the teaching part only, whereas learning is an individual exercise depending on the particular person's capacity and competency. So, in effect, teachers sometimes are only transferring knowledge without ensuring learning by the student. So, if teaching is seen as what students learn, then effective delivery is paramount. Thus, law teaching can be improved if good methods are implemented. See, we are still following the American law school culture, focusing on the theories of law rather than the practice of law. And we all know this pandemic have made us what do you call equipped, or rather shifted us, or made us to take innovative methods of teaching like online classes, webinars, seminars. This webinar is also an example. So through the Zoom or the Google Meet. So these methods we definitely cannot avoid. I am sure that these methods are going to stay forever. Even after regular physical or offline classes starts, these online system is definitely going to stay. And students are also exposed to experienced and knowledgeable faculty world over, sitting in their own comfort zone. So there are some merits or also demerits relating to this system of online classes, but I'm not going into the details about it. But this system, as I told you earlier, is definitely going to stay. So the law schools should without fail develop new modern methods, technology based or otherwise, like role play models, simulations, adalat, mediation skills, moot court exercises, and family court dramas to their curriculum. See, actually, while I was teaching environmental law in Law College Ernakulam, I used to prepare a problem of public hearing and make the students prepare for it as public activists, as bureaucrats, as ministers, as aggrieved persons, like that. So, and also corporates. So, by that way, they actually get to understand what is public hearing and what kind of method can be adopted whenever there is injustice to the environment. So, these are all techniques which only a particular teacher can take. And in addition to the conventional lecture method, so problem method as well as case method has been adopted. But traditional method is often criticized as teacher centered. But as we all know, even Jayakumar sir will agree with me that teacher method or the lecture method is definitely relevant even today, depending on the teacher who is taking this subject. So, teacher method should stay, but in addition to that, other methods should also be adopted. So, in summary, innovative teaching and learning method is not panacea. It cannot replace traditional methods in legal education. So, modern methods and innovative technological based pedagogy shall be applied and introduced in collaboration with the traditional ones. So, legal education, in short, I would like to conclude my presidential address by saying that legal education should prepare lawyers to meet the new challenges of working in a globalized knowledge economy in which the nature and organization of law and legal practice are undergoing a paradigm shift. It should ensure justice oriented legal education as enshrined in the Indian Constitution, and it must inculcate the need to practice the highest standard of professional ethics and a spirit of public service. The aim must be to meet the growing demands of the legal services without, that is, this demand should be met without undermining the public service character of the law schools. So the most immediate challenge is to improve the quality of legal education and by using methods to allow the students to acquire skills in the professions. So actually, I'm very happy that I'm able to convey this message to the teachers or the aspirants or the participants who are going to write the UGC NET exam. They should always have this in mind while taking the challenge of a teacher in legal education. I once again thank all the coordinators and the participants and also the members of the LJRF for giving me this opportunity. Thank you and best wishes for this initiative by the LJRF. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Your words are truly enlightening. Next, with much honor and pleasure, I invite Dr. N.K. Jayagumar, former Vice Chancellor, National University of Advanced Legal Studies, to officially inaugurate this program and to share views on the topic, Role of Law Teachers in India, Opportunities and Challenges. I wholeheartedly welcome you, sir.
Thank you. Dr. Saroja, Advocate Safi Mohan, Advocate Jinu M. Kurian, Advocate Arya Nair, Advocate Nidima Nair, other office bearers of the Law and Justice Research Foundation, law teachers, students, lawyers, dear friends. First of all, let me thank Professor Saroja for her introductory words. In fact, many of the points which I wanted to mention in my inaugural address were already included in Saroja's presidential address. So I will not repeat those points. Now, I am in the 46th year as a law teacher. And I have participated in a large number of seminars, workshops, training program on that. And I have spoken on a number of subjects, wide range of subjects, some of which I know, some of which I don't know. But under pressure, I had to accept invitations and to go and speak on various platforms. But let me tell you, this is the first time that somebody is asking me to speak on the role of law teacher. I've never spoken on this subject. Nobody has asked me to speak on this subject so far. Why is that? We discuss subjects which are relevant, subjects which are irrelevant, subjects which are important, subjects which are insignificant. But now teachers are taken for granted. Now teachers are never considered as a subject deserving any serious discussion. I'm happy that LJRF decided to organize a discussion on the role of law teachers. But I understand that most of the participants are people who are aspiring to be law teachers. Some of you may already be teaching as guest faculty. I don't know whether there are any full-time law teachers among the audience. The biggest disadvantage of online platforms is that you don't really see in flesh and blood people who are listening to you or supposed to be listening to you. I don't even know whether people are listening to me or doing something else. But we have to make the best use of the modern technology. The circumstances compel us to do that. Let me begin with a small story. It happened long back. There was a king who wanted to honor the most respected person in his kingdom. He wanted to institute an award for that, something like Padma Shri or Padma Bhushan. So he publicized this program, and a lot of people came. One by one, each entered the platform and described himself, his career, why he considers himself as a respectable person. First, a doctor came on the platform and he said, "I save human life. I am entitled to the greatest respect that society can command." People clapped and he occupied a chair there. Then came an engineer who said, "I make all the infrastructure for society. Without infrastructure, society can't achieve any progress. So I am the person who builds great bridges, dams, buildings, everything. I am a builder. I actually build society." So similarly, people from many professions came, described their contribution to society, and explained why they have to be respected by society. And finally, an old person came on into the platform, a person with a grey beard like me. And this man said, and the moment this man entered the stage, all others stood up with folded hands. Some fell on his feet. King was also surprised. King was asking, "Who is this gentleman?" Everybody is standing up in great reverence. Then somebody told the king, he is a teacher. So this story just reminds us that teachers are entitled to the greatest respect. A society must respect teachers more than anybody else. Everybody contributes. So many people contribute to the society. But teachers' contribution is unique. What will be the subject you teach?
It seems N.K. Jaguma sir's internet connection is offline. He will be joining us shortly, very shortly.
There was some problem with the network. Is it
Yeah,
okay
yes,
now?
sir. You are audible now. Yes.
You can see and hear me? Yes?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yes. Can I
We
continue?
can see you and
Continue.
hear you, sir. Yeah, please continue.
So I was telling you a small story about the contribution that a teacher makes and the respect he commands in a society. As teachers, we have so many different experiences. In the last 45 years, I have been interacting with generations of students. Some of them have reached very high positions in life, in politics, bureaucracy, judiciary. And my experience has been, different. Some people don't acknowledge or respect you as a teacher. Some others show great respect, a respect beyond one's expectation. I remember once somebody asked a minister of Kerala who happened to be my student about me. And this gentleman who became a minister in Kerala, I don't remember him. I don't remember that. But this was a student who came to me very frequently for so many favors, undue favors, of course. And maybe because I was reluctant to give undue favors, he soon forgot about me. And when somebody asked, he, without any prick of conscience, he said, "No, I don't remember, I don't recollect him," like that. But I also have very, very pleasant, unforgettable experiences. For example, recently, just 2 weeks back, there was a program in which a former judge of the Supreme Court, a person who has just retired as a judge of the Supreme Court, was inaugurating the program. I was to preside. And this judge found that in the program, his inaugural address was the first item and my presidential address was the second. He got very angry, provoked. He asked the organizers, "Hey, what have you done? Professor Jaykumar is on the stage and how can I speak before him? He is my guru." So he asked the organizers to change the program, put my presidential address first, and then his inaugural address. And he keeps on acknowledging the role of a teacher in holding his career, shaping him as an individual. So, there are different types of people, some who acknowledge and respect a teacher, some who don't. So we have to live with that. Now, I will tell you a few things about some of the problems broadly about legal education, how to impart legal education, what role a teacher does play in that process, and some of the recent challenges including the challenge of information technology to the way in which legal instruction is delivered. Now, if you want to summarize my whole inaugural address today, I am raising one or two questions. The first question is what to teach. This is very crucial. Periodically, we redo our curriculum, add new subjects, puts focus on subjects which have never received any particular focus. In this, the teacher will have to play a very crucial role. As you may be knowing, the curriculum is prepared by academic bodies of the university, and in these academic bodies, teachers are necessarily represented. Not only represented, teachers have a dominating role in the academic bodies. So, in deciding what to teach, teachers have a very critical role to perform. They decide what to teach. I don't forget the role assigned to professional bodies, statutory professional bodies like the Bar Council of India. They can prescribe a framework, because they can lay down standards of legal education according to the Advocates Act. They have some responsibility, statutory responsibility in this matter. So subject to what framework is prescribed by the Bar Council, academic bodies of the university are responsible for fixing the curriculum. So it is there that the role of a teacher becomes very prominent. Whether a teacher can feel the pulse of changes happening around the world, so that the legal curriculum remains updated, the legal curriculum is made strong enough, potential enough to face the challenges that are thrown up. So I think that's the first responsibility of a teacher, which is not taken very seriously at the moment. So as teachers, as aspiring teachers, should clearly understand that your decisions on what to teach play a very important role in making legal education relevant or irrelevant, making legal education attractive or unattractive, making legal education a sought after program or a discarded, neglected program. These are all very important decisions, and there the teacher has to play a very important role. Now, how to teach is another important question. Once you have arrived at this kind of consensus on the content of the courses, the curriculum that is prescribed, the question arises, how do we deliver the curriculum to the students? Professor Saroja was speaking about some of the methods of teaching. All the methods are relevant, some are more relevant, some are more useful in particular contexts or for particular subjects. But no teacher can totally remain confined to one method of teaching. Various methods will have to be tried out. Each subject or each topic in a particular subject, each module may demand a different approach from a teacher. Some may be clinical oriented, some may be theory, doctrine oriented. Some may be case law oriented, case method may be suitable there. So these methods are definitely important, and we may have to discuss the methods. But rather than explaining various methods of teaching, some general points which I want to make. First, a master's degree and nowadays net plus net. Master's degree with a certain percentage of marks plus net is the qualification for a law teacher. Nothing more. And even after being recruited as a law teacher, no special training is given, not only for law teachers, but college teachers as a whole. Some in-service programs, refresher courses, orientation programs are there, but it takes time. So when a teacher becomes a law teacher through a process of law, he or she is appointed as a teacher. You go to a law school, you enter the classroom, maybe first time some professor or the head of the institution introduce you to the students. Then it is you and your students. Nobody intervenes. And a teacher has total liberty to decide how he will deliver the course to the students, how he will communicate to the students. So the teacher-student relation, I would say it is a kind of power equation that exists in our classroom. Whatever may be the method you use, very often it is a lecture method. What really happens is, in the classroom, only the teacher's voice is heard. Earlier, teachers used to be called lecturers. They won't lecture. Whether anybody is listening is irrelevant. Students may listen or may not listen. So, this lecture method makes classrooms places of monologue and monotony. Very often, students, especially students who are above average, students who have high expectations about a law degree program, get disappointed because they don't get what they expect. And we should confess. See, as law teachers, you never will have to feel guilty that you have not listened to the expectations of students. It happens to almost everybody. But how do we make the classroom a place for debate, a place for discussion, a place for exchange of views, a place for sharing of views, where the teacher and student are both engaged in the collaborative pursuit of knowledge. In our case, it is legal knowledge. And the teacher is constantly endeavoring to acquire more knowledge. Not only the teachers, every teacher, in every hour of his career as a law teacher, is engaged in accumulating knowledge for himself. This knowledge may come from students. We have to acknowledge that. And we have to approach the task with humility. Humility is the quality that a teacher should have. What do I mean by humility? Humility is the readiness to accept that I don't know all the answers. I don't have all the knowledge. Our inadequacies, especially in a discipline like law, where students very often expect authoritative answers from a teacher. Because the entire discipline of law is built upon the concept of authority. This is a handicap as well as an advantage as far as a law teacher is concerned. A person teaching another subject is not under this handicap. For example, you teach history, you teach political science or economics, you may teach languages, science subjects. But law is different from all these subjects because legal rules, which are the backbone of the legal system, legal rules which form the resource for a future professional to build up his career. These legal rules are authoritative rules. These legal rules may come from the legislature, they may come from the judiciary, they may even come from the executive, they may come even from society, evolved from the society. Customary practices. So, law is a compendium of all these various sources from which rules emerge. And naturally, people expect answers which have an authoritative character when questions are raised. But can you always do that? This is the question. Very often, the certainty of law itself may be open to doubt. The exact implications of a Supreme Court decision, the ratio dissident of a particular decision may not be clear. But students expect the teacher to give them an authoritative version of that. What should you do? See, these are situations when you have to convert teaching into a collaborative process where inputs, intellectual inputs from students play a very important role, dynamic role. I have seen students who are far more resourceful than seasoned law teachers, experienced law teachers. New angles of thinking, new lines of thinking, new meanings that they find out in a particular judicial pronouncement which our mind has escaped. And even when we speak of the authority of law, authoritative nature of law, legal rules, you must not forget even for a single moment that law originates from a particular social context. And unless you are always conscious of the social context which has given rise to a law, or the doctrines which exist in our constitution or in our legal system, are doctrines which must find their application in a society which is constantly changing, transformative society, I should say. And when a transformative society needs law which will accelerate the process of social change, certainty may not be the most essential attribute of law. And whether as a law teacher you can open up all the various dimensions of a legal doctrine, legal principle, a judicial decision, this is perhaps the greatest challenge that a law teacher has to face every day, every hour of his teaching, active life as a teacher. There are many recent examples when the highest judicial forums have failed our expectations. For example, when thousands of farmers are on agitation with focus on their life and death problems, of course, the immediate provocation was the enactment of a few laws by the government, central government. There are questions of constitutionality. There are questions of a defective legislative process in which even a proper voting has not taken place in Parliament. And when these issues are before the Supreme Court of India, we are disappointed to find that the Supreme Court has not given any priority to adjudicating the constitutionality of the law. But they have started appointing a committee. And the committee discuss with the farmers, discuss with the government, come with some formula to settle the agitation. This is what we expect from the Supreme Court. As a law teacher, how do you explain this to the students, and how do you invite students to join in a lively debate, discussion on the proper role of the apex court in a situation like this? I may have my own views, but it's not necessary that other teachers may agree with me. So, this kind of an open forum approach, especially when critical issues are involved, is what is necessary as far as a good law teacher is concerned. How many of us encourage or at least tolerate questions from a student. I had a friend who has retired as a law teacher. He was a professor of law. In every class, every year when he begins his class, he will announce that in my class I encourage students asking questions. You can ask any question. After a pause, he will say, but please remember, nobody who has raised questions in my class has ever taken the LLB degree. That's a word of caution. You are free to ask questions, but if you ask questions, you are not going to pass your LLB examination. So this is the way teachers encourage students to raise questions in class. Maybe some teachers find students' questions too complicated, too complex, too difficult to answer. In such a situation, my question is, why can't we frankly admit? That is the quality of humility which I mentioned earlier. We don't say that, law is a social science where there are certainties as well as uncertainties. There are ambiguities. That is so much litigation happens. The law is enacted and that law is 100% clear. 100% clarity is achieved by a lawmaker. No disputes will arise. No litigation will take place. So many courts are engaged in interpreting the law and adjudicating issues arising out of legal interpretation. It necessarily means that no human lawmaker can attain perfection in legislative drafting. No human judge can attain perfection in reconciling conflicts arising in the field of law, finding out solutions. Or take another example where, everyone in Kerala is very much familiar. There was a litigation about entry of women in the Sabarimala temple. Sabarimala temple in Kerala follows certain customs, certain traditions. Nobody is sure about the origin of this custom or from which date the custom has been followed without any interruption. But it is true that for some time this custom has been meticulously followed. And women belonging to a certain age group were not permitted to go beyond Pamba. The matter reached the Supreme Court of India, where, as in every case, the conflict is presented as a conflict of rights. The right to equality of women. Why should women be discriminated? Why should women of a particular age group should be discriminated? Right to freedom of religion, worship, faith. These are also constitutional rights. Similarly, the right of a temple to prescribe customs, follow customs, enforce their customs, beliefs. So when these various rights which have a legal dimension, they come into conflict with each other. And judges will have to resolve the conflict. You all know that Supreme Court was not able to pronounce a unanimous judgment, a judgment supported by all the judges. There was a dissent. So how do we teach such questions in class? How much importance do you give to the dissenting judgment? How much importance do you give to the majority judgment? Technically, the majority judgment is the law. Dissenting judgment is rather ignored. But any serious student of the judicial process in India very well knows that many dissenting judgments of today have become majority judgments tomorrow. Like Fasil Ali's judgment in A.K. Govaran's case. So, it is unwise. It is totally unwise to ignore dissenting judgments and focus only on the majority. Every student must be informed. Every student must get an impression that there are necessarily more than one view. It is possible. Even if you believe in logical analysis of situations and arriving at logical conclusion, people like Professor Julius Stone have very impressively illustrated how logic itself can lead to a number of possible solutions. So with logic alone, you cannot solve legal problems. So something more than logic is required. That is where the social context, when you have choices, which choice will be socially desirable? Holmes, who was a great judge and jurist, once said, life of the law has not been logic, it has been experience. With logic alone, you cannot solve legal problems. You may be a logician to the core. Your analysis will be 100% logical, but the solutions you offer may not result in socially desirable consequences. So any judge who is not conscious of the consequences of his decision, I would say, will be a bad judge. His logic is perfect. As a logician, he is par excellence. But his contribution to the development of law, his contribution to the transformative potential of law, especially in a society which is being under severe pressure to undergo a transformation. And a constitution which is very vibrant, a constitution which has enshrined a set of values right from the preamble to the directive principles. So you cannot do, as a judge, you don't do justice to the constitutional values if you rely only on logic. So unless as a law teacher you are able to present these dimensions of the law to your students and invite them for an open debate, share your own inadequacies, admit your own inadequacies in your knowledge of law, which must get enriched every day, every hour of your career as a law teacher. Don't go to the law school as a teacher with the impression that your learning is complete. No. The moment you enter the portals of the law school as a teacher, you are also becoming a learner. It's a learning process, no doubt about that. That is why I emphatically said humility is the most important quality that a teacher should possess. A knowledge of your own limitations, inadequacies, and your preparedness to learn even from your students. That is what will make you a good law teacher. Some of the law teachers, unfortunately, behave as if they have reached a knowledge level which need not further be supplemented or updated or modernized. Such law teachers are doomed to fail as teachers. I had a teacher when I was a law student. He used to come to the class with a notebook which was written by him when he started his career as a law teacher. It was in a dilapidated condition. We were all feeling sympathy for this man. We were asking ourselves, can't he at least rewrite this in a new notebook and bring it to the class so that it is presentable? So he comes with this dilapidated notebook and starts dictating, reading from portions from the notebook. He is blissfully ignorant of what has taken place after he has ceased to be a law student. So he is not a role model. Please don't accept such teachers as role models. And then the pedagogy, not really the teaching methods, but the general overall perspective of a pedagogue. You may be knowing that there is a rule of jurisprudence which is called critical legal studies movement. And along with that, there is a critical pedagogy developed by a group of teachers, not only in law, but in every discipline. And this critical pedagogy does not put its focus on the certainties of law, but otherwise on the uncertainties of law. The transformative potential of law. And in using such a pedagogic tool, critical pedagogy, law teacher also becomes a very active agent of this transformative process. Unless we do that, we will be rendered irrelevant, insignificant. Many people have been lamenting that law teachers do not get the recognition they deserve. Why? Do law teachers play their role effectively? Do law teachers contribute anything to social development, social transformation? Unless the answers to these questions are in the affirmative, the lament that law teachers don't get the position, the respect, the recognition they deserve is a meaningless lament. There is no logic in such protestations. Prove yourself worthy of recognition, worthy of respect. Show society that you have a reservoir of knowledge, legal knowledge, which can be put to useful purposes by society. And your role in building up the next generation of professionals for the legal system, that's also something you have to assert. But unfortunately, there is a widespread belief which is shared by senior judges, senior lawyers, that law teachers do not contribute anything. Once in a meeting in the Government Law College, Thiruvananthapuram, a senior judge of the High Court of Kerala was the chief guest. I was also there to deliver a keynote address or something. The judge spoke first, inaugurating the program, and the judge was, unashamedly, he was telling the students, law students, that I was a student of this very same college many years back, but I have never attended any classes. very proudly, Judge of the High Court is announcing before the students of the Law College to Trivandrum. I have never attended any classes. And what's the message that he is conveying to the students? Without attending students, I have become a Judge of the High Court. You can also remain away from the classes and you also have the chance of becoming a High Court judge. So it was when it was my turn to speak, I said, appointment of judges is not a transparent process, unfortunately, in our country. So a person becomes a judge of the High Court through several routes. I don't know which route this learned judge has taken. I am not making any guesswork. But on the assertion that the judge made that he has not attended any classes and he has become a High Court judge, what I should add is that a person who has not attended classes may become a judge of the High Court, but every student who does not attend classes is not going to become a judge of the High Court or not even a lawyer. So the importance of legal education, the importance of law teachers is something which must be recognized by the legal profession as well as the judiciary first, and then by the government, by the society. So you must prove ourselves, not you, we, I should say, including myself. We must prove ourselves worthy of respect by society. We must prove our relevance to society. Unless we do that, we have absolutely no right to protest that we don't get any respect, recognition, etc. So these are some of the general observations that I want to make in front of a group of students who aspire to be law teachers. And finally, I will speak a few words about the impact of new technologies on legal education. Digital age provides an opportunity to revitalize and modernize legal education and to make it more individualized, relevant, human, and accessible. See, there are different ways in which digital technologies may produce an impact on legal education. The way in which we are interacting at the moment is one such development. To what extent we can go along the path of digitalization and enrich legal education is a question that has become very much relevant. Earlier, there was a mention about teaching methods made by our chairperson, Professor Saroja. And some of you who have studied legal education as a part of your course, you remember that case method was a very popular method introduced by Langdon, Harvard Law School. And suddenly case books appeared. And most of the leading law publishers were making a lot of money, billions of dollars, by publishing case books on practically a very legal subject. You know the present situation? The situation today is that every publisher has stopped publishing case books. Case books are not in demand in law schools. Gradually they are weeded out. Why? Because the entire landscape has changed. Digital technologies have thrown up a large number of unforeseen methods of learning and methods of teaching. And One accusation about the law teaching community or legal education in general is that we are not in the forefront. We are lagging behind in making use of digital technologies compared to every other discipline, especially professional disciplines like medical science, engineering, technology. The discipline of law has been lagging behind in making proper use of the digital technologies. Now, what should the law teachers, law faculties do? We must view the digital age as an opportunity to embrace and harness powerful technologies that will help us develop meaningful and relevant pedagogical tools to teach our students more effectively, more efficiently, and more affordably on an individualized basis. So digital technologies also offer us an opportunity to democratize education, make legal education affordable. But there are many people who raise the doubt, raise a question, that does it not dehumanize education? There is some truth in that, because today I am speaking to a group of students, maybe I think 45 have joined. 45 students are sitting at different parts of the state. I am under the impression that 45 students are listening to me, but I don't get any response from anybody. I don't get any questions. I don't answer the question. There is no interaction taking place. Unless digital technologies are made interactive, you can never consider that as a substitute for traditional kind of communication. There are so many things we can develop. We are at the elementary stage now. But even this elementary stage has, I should say, its own advantages. For example, I have been getting invitations from so many universities in India, and I have been politely declining those invitations because I don't like to travel now. But as soon as the online lecture method has arrived, online platforms have been thrown open, I accepted every invitation. I have already spoken on digital platform to a number of students in various universities in India. So that's an opportunity the digital technology has provided us. But we must take this further. Do not remain satisfied with what we have already done, but there is much more to be done. I am very thankful to the organizers, Law and Justice Research Foundation. I have taken part in some of their programs. And I'm full of appreciation for the initiatives they take. And I am sure that LJRF will continue their efforts to make law and legal education relevant to society. Thank you again for giving me the opportunity to speak a few words on this platform. If there is any facility for making comments or questions, I would like to invite any participant to make use of that facility. I don't know, only the organizers will be able to tell. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, sir, for your truly informative words. If participants have any query, you can directly ask, or you can put it in chat box.
Yeah. Whichever is convenient. See, for the organizers, how do you organize it? Messages or direct questions, or what's your idea? How do you facilitate that?
So let them ask questions directly, or otherwise in chat box also they can put it. So if they are putting it in the chat box, we will.
Whichever is more convenient to you, you can follow that method.
Yeah, sure.
I don't have any particular preferences, but
Thank you,
it
sir.
can be done.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Sir Jayagumar sir,
Yes.
myself, my name is Sandeep. I'm the Joint Secretary of Law and Justice Research Foundation. At this event, in this occasion, I would like to ask you one question. That it is something that came out of my mind, and it is there in my mind for a long time. Uh, so this will be the first time I will be discussing it in public. I don't know whether what I'm going to ask you is ludicrous or not, whether it is illogical or not. I don't know. But nevertheless, I want to convey this in this public forum among the members of LJRF and other participants. But I just want to know your opinion, and I would also like to know the opinion of ma'am also, Saroja ma'am also. So the thought that I was having, the thought I was having is, you see, academicians and the advocates are occupying different domains, different universe of law. That is what I felt. That is, academicians know very well how the law should be, and the advocates are in a world where how the law is, how the law should be, and how the law is being practiced. And they often they occupy the different worlds, and they of course both of us, I believe, are struggling to reconcile them, reconcile the both sides. It is a struggle nevertheless, and but I believe there is a lack of podium or platform where the academicians and the advocates can come together, and that is where Law and Justice Research Foundation is coming. But nevertheless, the one thought I had is, why can't academicians be given a membership in the Bar Council of Kerala, or Bar Council of India for that matter, a different membership, different category of membership, where the academicians will be heard by the our brothers and sisters in the legal profession, where we can express our opinion, and we can also hear what the advocates have to say, or what the bar and the bench has to say. And the bar, why can't the Bar Council of India, India regulate academic activity, the standards of academicians? Why can't the academicians share their idea of how to practice law? That has not been happened yet, and I was wondering why academicians cannot get a membership of a special category of membership, maybe. And why can there be an increased collaboration within the Bar Council itself? Traditionally, I believe the Bar Council was very much reserved for advocates.
Please be
and
very brief, because others
yes sir, yes sir. This is my point. Is it ludicrous to give membership to academicians in the Bar Council of India for the purpose of more increased participation?
Okay. You raised a number of very important questions, and if I start answering all your questions, I may need another 1 hour or more. So I'm not attempting that. But the crucial question that you raised, and the final part of your presentation, it is, we have adopted a system whereby a person who has opted for full-time law teaching, the career of a law teacher as a full-time occupation, is not allowed to practice. He is no more a practicing lawyer. And bar councils are professional bodies of practicing lawyers. We have made a bifurcation. But I think our constitution makers were very thoughtful. They were anticipating distinguished jurists emerge, even for recruitment to the Supreme Court of India. They may be considered. That kind of attitude was there among the constitution makers. But unfortunately, no distinguished jurist has ever been appointed to the Supreme Court. That's another thing. But there is a reason. I feel there is a reason for making law teaching a full-time profession, because teaching and research must go hand in hand. So unless there are somebody who are devoted to research on problems of our legal system can have no development. So that role was expected to be performed by the law teachers. Along with teaching, they must also be engaged in research. But what's the reality? In reality, research is considered as the efforts made by a person for obtaining a degree. Once I had interviewed a person appearing for the post of a professor in a university. His doctoral dissertation was on right to information. I thought he must be well versed with that area. So I asked him some questions about some of the critical issues in right to information and some recent developments. And this person was just telling the interview board, that after my thesis, after I have submitted my thesis, I have not been paying any attention to this subject, this area. See, a person who has done research on right to information, just forgetting that subject, deleting that from his mind, obliterating that from his mind, and remaining blissfully ignorant of that area thereafter. So that's not the research. Research is a continuous process. And teachers must be continuously engaged, consistently engaged in legal research. That is why we have made a bifurcation between the practicing profession of law and the academic profession of law. But the noble objectives with which this bifurcation was made, I don't think they have been accomplished. And for that, the legal academics will have to blame themselves, not anybody else.
I have one answer to that. I think Sandeep is having a very crucial and an important doubt, bridging the gap between the bar and the bench. And I think as law teachers, that gap can be filled if not practicing as a regular lawyer. They can very well be made do consultancy work, such that they are also getting an introduction or an experience in the practicing world. And as a teacher, it is very essential that the practicing side of law is also taught to the students. And for that purpose, that gap has to be filled definitely. And earlier we used to have part-time teachers who were senior lawyers in the court to take classes on the procedure laws and other aspects. But nowadays we don't see that kind of interaction of the senior lawyers with the students. So it can be given a thought that teachers too are allowed to have some kind of consultancy on the practicing side, such that they are able to guide the students in a better way, not only on the theoretical part, but the application of the law, if necessary, not as a regular this thing, but if necessary. And also the Bar Council of India and also the bar council, bar associations, they can also have academicians in their panel, such that what changes can be brought in the curriculum, or the teaching methods, or the role of or role and or teachers in the legal education, etc. Changes are to come. No, it cannot have a stagnant position always. Changes, because in foreign countries, teachers are not put into this tight framework. That is my view, personal view.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir, for your answers. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. Does anyone have any other question to ask? Okay, as there is no other queries, now we invite Advocate Ajay R. Kamath, Secretary LJRF, to talk to us about Law and Justice Research Foundation. I welcome you, sir.
Thank you, Arya. Is my screen visible?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. So, I myself, Ajay R. Kamath, the Secretary of Law and Justice Research Foundation State Chapter. So, due to shortage of time, I will try to explain about LJRF in brief. So, first, the LJRF is a society registered under the Travancore Cochin Scientific Charitable Societies Act, and in the year 2018 and in the year 2020 we received the recognition of Nidhi Aayog, and the domain of our society is www.ljrf.in, and the aims and objective of LJRF is to promote basic legal literacy and to spread legal awareness with the objective to enhance the awareness of law among the general public, and to conduct classes, legal workshops, and legal awareness campaigns. And the second objective of Law and Justice Research Foundation is to manage education or such types of institution, including libraries, and to promote legal education, including continuing legal education, and to spread patriotism and secular among the general public, especially among the youth. The third objective of the Law and Justice Research Foundation is to conduct social audit regarding the impact of law on the society, including the implementation of legal awareness and legal aid programs conducted for the welfare of citizens of India by the government and non-governmental organizations. So, as we all know that there are so many institutions which are on one domain centric, like there are associations for academicians, for judges, lawyers, law students, and the general public. So LJRF is a comprehensive platform in which all of this domain, that is academicians, judges, lawyers, law students, and the general public, came together for a common objective. Then we have 14 district chapters, and we have conducted more than 100 plus academic sessions with 40 plus webinars, and we have issued till date around 2000 and plus certificates as to promote the legal literacy and reform. Then some of the important programs of Law and Justice Research Foundations are: the first one is constitutional legal literacy. As to attain our objective, the Law and Justice Research Foundation, in association with the Legal Literacy Center, Cherankir constituency, as we have Legal Literacy Center in the Cherankir constituency, under the leadership of Honorable Deputy Speaker of Kerala Legislative Assembly, Constitutional Literacy Center is established there to promote basic constitutional literacy. And as we all know, for which we have gathered here, the TDP, Teachers Development Program, The program aims to give to convey the latest techniques, methods, and approach of teaching in association with our subsidiary institution, Law Exams. And we are also providing the 7 months comprehensive training program for UGC NET JRF law exams for law exams. And in order to talk about the TDP more, my friend Gino M. Kurian, director of the LJRF Academy, will brief you further later. And one of the most important initiative is Legal Education Reforms Committee. Like, this committee will monitor the present standards and what all the changes which are to be made in the legal industry, like in legal education industry. And this committee and the report of this committee will truly help, like the students can easily choose like which institutions are better for them, and to decide. And also we wish to bring a ranking system of legal education institutions, so that it will be easy for the students, and also it's an opportunity for academicians and institutions to know their lackings and to improve the quality of their service in the country. Then we have also conducted the 30-day internship program. The main aim of the 30-day internship program is to give a quality internship program rather than sitting in some of the offices and to get a certificate. We have provided many classes with the help of the industrial experts. And regarding the first 30-day internship program, first session, like it's over, and the first batch is completed, and the applications for second batch is still going on. Then as to achieve the objective of our objective, Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar and his thought must be given a significant reference, so that by understanding that, Law and Justice Research Foundation has conducted a special program regarding the contributions and relevance of the thoughts and the ideas of Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar. And next committee is regarding the Criminal Justice Reforms Committee. Like, this committee will be in charge of monitoring the existing criminal law and the relevance of correctional institutions, like to prevent the criminals or to reformate them rather than committing crimes again and again. As we all know, after getting a LLB degree, basically or in general, there are two industries. One is in teaching field and another is lawyering field. So as LJRF give importance to both the sides, so that LJRF, in association with the Cochin Institute of International Arbitration, has designed a special flagship program to give a comprehensive training for the lawyer, so that they can eliminate the preliminary difficulties faced by a lawyer who is entering into the field of profession. Then another flagship program is Nervali. Nervali is nothing but a program to give emphasis to the Probation of Offenders Act and plea bargaining and such concepts on, in association with the Department of Social Justice, Government of Kerala. And I also like to announce that there are plenty of research opportunities available in this subject regarding the Probation of Offenders Act and in plea bargaining and such subject. Some of the members have already started, and if anybody wishes to have a research on this topic, they may contact the respective coordinators or directly through me for enrolling into this. And as we understand the change in times, LJRF also give significant importance to the arbitration concepts. So in association with the Cochin Institute of Arbitration, LJRF is conducting arbitration classes with with the industrial experts, so that to give awareness and to give an idea or an introduction to the students or those who are interested in the arbitration. And the next one is regarding LGRF Voice. LGRF Voice is a website in which our members or students can give or submit their articles. So it can be used by the general public. So some of the members have already submitted the articles. So if like, it's also open that if you wish to submit an article in the domain of probation and in constitution, you can also get in touch with the LGRF. Now, the LGRF Academy is a massive online open courses, as we believe that we to promote education to every sections of society, so that we can achieve a good society. So that LGRF is also designed a platform called LGRF Academy, in which the students or our members or general public can access the site and to learn, and it's a self-discipline platform. So that's all from my side. Back to Arya.
Thank you so much, sir. Next, I invite Advocate Gino M. Kudian, Course Director, LGRF Academy, to share information about this Teachers Development Program. I welcome you, sir.
Thank you, Arya. Let me share my presentation also. Thank you, everyone, for the opportunity. Honorable dignitaries, especially Dr. N.K. Jayakumar sir, Dr. Saroja madam, Safi Mohan sir, and all other dignitaries, LGRF members, and participants of GetNet and CLARK LLM program, which we are organizing now. A warm welcome to all of you. I'm so privileged to introduce this course before you, especially when we have the presence of Dr. N.K. Jayakumar sir and Dr. Saroja madam with us, who are one of the best, like they are the best faculties which I have met. So privileged to introduce this course before all of you. This lawexams.co.in, it's already familiar to everyone, especially in Kerala, at least, I believe. And also it is growing its reach to other parts of India also. So lawexams.co.in, as already explained by Mr. Ajay R. Kamath, is part of LJRF. Law exams, even it was introduced even before LJRF, and lawexams.co.in, it is a digital platform. It is providing education, training, and other coaching services to students or aspirants who are willing to write competitive exams, also prepare for UGC NET and similar kinds of exams. So lawexams.co.in is a website which is providing all these kinds of services. GetNet or this TDP program, this is part of LJRF and the Law Exams joint ventures. Teachers development program, which is aiming to develop skills and abilities of teachers. And also research development program, that is another program which is also part of our programs. This is aiming for research and development skills, developing the skills of researchers. So this is what we are aiming to develop skills of our students or our aspirants. So part of these two programs, we are introducing this special focus program for aspirants who are planning for the UGC NET JRF. This is a program which we designed around 1 year ago, and fortunately we got an opportunity to introduce before you all after reviews and all now. So we are so glad to present it before you. This particular course program, you might have received our brochures. We have around 6 hours classes every week. So monthly we will be having around 24 classes. This will be a regular course. It will be like stretching up to 7 months period. Our resource persons are expert in those particular areas which they are concentrating, which they are taking classes. That I'm going to introduce them, their names also. Lawexams.co.in is a platform which we are using, and you'll be having other online platforms created by our own institution for your assignments and all. But definitely lawexams.co.in, which is providing descriptive portions as well as MCQs in particular areas which we are going to discuss in each and every class. So once you complete a particular course, a particular class, you will be having respective descriptive portions as well as MCQs, which will be available on lawexams.co.in, and you can easily attend those questions. You can read those portions and you can attend those questions. That will be helpful for you to prepare regularly. And our 30 days internship program, and also we have other resource persons, other editors and coordinators and all, who we are having around 4 layers of people who are working under our research and development team. So we developed all these questions, descriptive portions and all with an aim to crack UGC NET JRF or other similar kinds of competitive exams. So you will be having frequent assessments also. After 1 or 2 months period, you will be having test papers. Other competitive exams. This particular program, which is designed mainly for UGC NET, but it is helpful for you to crack other kinds of similar kinds of competitive exams with similar kinds of similar portions. So if you are preparing regularly for this one, definitely a similar kind competitive exams like assistant professorship exam, also CLAT LLM exam, similar kinds of other PSC exams where the same syllabus or similar kind of portions are followed. There you can apply the same topics and same questions or similar way of practice. So that will give you a consistent effort, and that will help you to crack your ambitious exams easily. So our program currently, it is administered by General Convener Nilima V. Nair. She is an assistant professor of GLC Trivandrum, and we have 2 coordinators, Ms. Jomol J, who is working as assistant professor in Sri Narayana College, Putota, and Ms. Sherin Nasser, assistant professor at Al-Azhar College. Our resource persons, our mentor Safi Mohan sir, who will be undertaking classes for constitutional law and administrative law, and also comparative public law and systems of governance. Rajesh Kumar sir, he's a AGM for NABARD law department. He'll be taking classes for law of crimes, IPC. Dr. Levelman sir, he is also from Government Law College, Calicut, who will be taking classes for intellectual property rights. Mr. Vidyut KS sir, who will be taking classes for jurisprudence. He is also from GLC, Calicut. And Mr. Ranjit Chandran R, he's a deputy manager of Canara Bank, who will be taking classes for law of torts. Mr. Amit Varghese, he is also an AGM for SBI, Law Department SBI, who will be taking classes for family law. Again, Anis PKSR is from Government Law College, Calicut, who will be taking classes on environmental law and human rights. Mr. Sandeep S, who is our friend and one of the office bearers of LJRF, who is also a research scholar in NUIALS. He'll be taking classes on public international law, and myself will be handling commercial laws. Our editors, Deepthi P, she's an advocate at Calicut. Rani Al Niada, she's a research scholar from, working in CUSAT. Jomol J, assistant professor of Srinarayana Law College. Sridhar Viyas, who is studying third semester LLM Government Law College, Thiruvananthapuram. Adira V, assistant professor, Wales School of Law, Chennai. Divya K, advocate, she's a practicing advocate at Bar Association, Manarakat. Sharon K. Nasser, who is also an assistant professor of Al-Azhar Law College, Thodupuzha. Praveena C, fourth semester LLM, Government Law College, Thrissur. She has also qualified UGC. Shalini AP, assistant professor, the Kerala Law Academy Law College. Mohammad Shafi V, as first semester LLM, Government Law College, Thiruvananthapuram. These are our editors who will be like reviewing. We have around 40 students has already joined. They are divided into different groups. Our editors will be heading all those groups, and the students who are already joined, they will be preparing certain materials that will be exchanged for our own study purpose. So those will be reviewed by our editors, and those editors will be passing it to the resource persons. Again, the resource persons will review it, then will be finalized, and then again it will be circulated for your study purpose. Similarly, how we have prepared other materials with the help of our other LJRF members as well as interns. So this is how we prepare this. This is completely a voluntary program. All of our resource persons, editors, and everyone who are working with our program, our course, they are voluntarily contributing to this. And their efforts, their skills, we are using it for for a good cause and for everyone's benefit. So we wish you all the best. Try to use this opportunity and work well for your ambitious competitive exam, whichever you want to become. Work well, you will definitely get it. Wishing you all the best. Thank you. Back to Arya.
Thank you so much, sir. With this, we have come to the end of today's session. Now, I invite Ms. Jomol, member State Chapter LGRF, to deliver vote of thanks. I welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you, Arya. Good afternoon, all. Myself, Jomol, State Chapter member of Law and Justice Research Foundation. Nothing is complete without gratitude. And I am assigned with the duty to deliver vote of thanks. So, without wasting much time, I would like to thank all the wonderful persons who made this function really auspicious. So, first of all, I would like to thank Dr. Saroja A.S., former principal of various government law colleges in Kerala, who presided this function. Saroja Ma'am is one of the mentors of LJRF family, and she always motivates us and constantly guides us with her enlightened vision. So I express my sincere gratitude to you on behalf of LJRF family and all those persons present here. Thank you so much, ma'am. Then I sincerely thank our guest of honor, Dr. N.K. Jayagumar sir, former Vice Chancellor, National University of Advanced Legal Studies, for kindly accepting our invitation and gracing the inaugural function. Thank you, sir, for your interesting and thought-provoking words. And I'm sure that all the participants have taken note of your suggestions and will be discussing within their organizations the actions to be initiated at their level to improve the quality of legal education or quality of teaching. So thank you so much, sir, for your delightful words and valuable ideas. And my thanks also go to all the people who have given their precious time in organizing. In particular, I would like to acknowledge and thanks Safi Mohan sir, our mentor, Advocate Genome Kurian, Courts Director, LJRF, Advocate Nilima V. Nair, General Convener, TDP, Then Tejas Purushothaman sir, President, Law and Justice Research Foundation, Ajay R. Kamath, Secretary, LJRF, and all the state chapter members of LJRF and members of lawexams.co.in for arranging this function. And I also take this opportunity to thank all the resource persons and editors for providing their valuable time and help for the success of this program. Last but not the least, I thank you all for the patient listening that you have given us, and all the best to the participants of this Teachers Development Program. Thank you all. Thank you so much.